The Haynes ballroom shimmered with wealth. Crystal chandeliers, golden cutlery, dresses that cost more than houses. Laughter swirled like smoke, light, careless, cruel. And then the music stopped. All eyes turned toward the boy. Thin, trembling, dark skin contrasting the ivory gleam of the cello beside him, a cello almost as tall as his hope-starved frame. Isaiah Williams. No family, no voice in this room. Just fear, and a prayer he wasn't sure God still heard. Across the ballroom, Jeremy Haynes sat like a king, flawless suit, wine in hand, smirk carved deep into his face. He didn't see a child. He saw entertainment. "Go on, little boy," Jeremy said, voice dipped in condescension. "Play something for us." Then, almost as an afterthought, "If you impress me, maybe I'll adopt you." Laughter erupted like fireworks. But Isaiah didn't flinch. He couldn't, because to them it was a joke. But for him, it was a test of worth, a chance to matter, a sliver of escape carved through melody and mercy. And as he sat before the cello, fingers trembling over the strings, the world fell silent. As we dive into this powerful story, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Your engagement helps us reach more hearts and make kindness go viral. Now let's dive into the story. Isaiah had been quiet for so long. People stopped noticing he was there. That's how it started. Silence creeping in, not like peace, but like erasure. He remembered the shelter, not by its name, just the smell of bleach and old socks. The rust-colored cots lined up like soldiers. The sound of babies crying through thin walls. He remembered the volunteers, nice people who never stayed long. He remembered Mrs. Ella, the one who prayed over every meal like it could save a soul. Maybe it did. Then the fire came. He never found out what caused it. Just that smoke stung his lungs, and hands pulled him out before the roof gave in. After that, no one claimed him. No one remembered his name. So he walked. Through alleys, under bridges, his stomach tied in knots more often than not. He learned where stores threw out bread too old to sell. He learned how to be small, quiet, invisible. It was safer that way. But one day, behind a music shop with shattered windows and boarded doors, he saw it. A cello. Cracked, weather-warped, strings curled like tired vines. It shouldn't have meant anything, but it did. He dragged it behind the dumpster where he slept. Didn't know how to play. Didn't even know what it really was at first. But he remembered something. His mama's voice humming soft lullabies in the dark, her hand resting on his chest like a prayer. He remembered the way her hum rose and fell, like waves on a shore, or maybe like forgiveness. So he listened. To the wind, the street sounds, his own heartbeat. And he played, not with skill, not with technique, but with ache. He played every time his stomach growled, every time someone walked past him like he wasn't real, every time he missed his mother, so hard he couldn't breathe. He didn't know it, but the cello had become his prayer, and sometimes it felt like God answered. In the middle of a night so cold it hurt, Isaiah once whispered through chattering teeth, "God, I don't want to disappear." He wasn't sure if God heard, but the cello did. It sang back to him, low and broken and holy. He held on to that sound like it was a hand pulling him from the fire all over again. That's why this moment mattered. Not because of the chandelier ceilings or the million-dollar stairs, but because he couldn't go back to the streets. He wouldn't survive them again. He needed this chance like lungs need air. And so, when Jeremy Haynes mocked him in front of a sea of strangers, Isaiah stood still. Not because he wasn't afraid, but because even fear couldn't drown a prayer that had lived this long. He sat before the cello, and as his fingers reached for the strings, he breathed one word inside, "Lord." Then he closed his eyes and played. Jeremy Haynes did not believe in second chances, or soft things, or music anymore. He believed in control. He sat with his back straight, fingers laced over his knee, the picture of practiced elegance. His suit cost more than the piano in the corner. His smile, sharp, hollow, had closed million-dollar deals and silenced boardrooms. People admired him, envied him, feared him, and that's exactly how he liked it. Charity galas bored him, but they served a purpose: prestige, power, PR. Tonight he was bored again, until they brought out the boy with the cello. Jeremy had smirked, leaned back in his chair, and made his offer. "If you impress me, maybe I'll adopt you." The crowd laughed. He didn't. Not really. It wasn't about humor. It was about control. This boy, poor, awkward, scared, was everything Jeremy had buried in himself. Once, long ago, he had cried, had clung to softness. But then she died. His mother had been warmth incarnate, a violinist with tender hands and a tired laugh that still echoed in corners of his memory. She used to play for him when his chest felt tight and his world too loud. Her music was gentle and sacred, almost like prayer. "Let the music carry what you can't," she'd whispered once, tucking him in after his father had slammed another door. But she left. Too soon. Too fast. Jeremy was 13 when cancer stole her, and the house went quiet in all the wrong ways. His father taught him what it meant to be a man. No tears. No weakness. No softness. He learned fast. Buried the violin in the attic. Buried himself in business school. Learned to win. Built an empire tall enough to look down on the world that once ignored him. Now he gave to charities not out of kindness, but out of obligation. Image management. Optics. The applause meant nothing. Only the power soothed him. The feeling of being untouchable. But tonight, something unsettled him. It wasn't the boy's face. It was the cello. The way the boy looked at it, like it was sacred. Like it held every unspoken thing. It stirred something Jeremy didn't like to remember. A time when he wasn't guarded. When a violin filled the hallway at night. When he still believed music could hold the broken pieces of a soul together. He sipped his drink, forcing the memories back down. He wasn't 13 anymore. He was the man with the checkbook, the name on the building, the final word. Still, as the boy sat and the room hushed, Jeremy's eyes narrowed. The child's fingers trembled. His eyes closed. And then he played. The first note rang out, not perfect, but full. Full of something Jeremy had forgotten music could carry. And for one strange, unwelcome second, Jeremy Haynes forgot how to breathe. Isaiah's fingers didn't work. They slipped on the strings the moment he touched them, letting out a shrill, broken sound that sliced through the elegant hush of the ballroom like a scream. A few guests flinched. Most laughed not kindly. Poor kid's never touched a cello in his life. Maybe he thought it was a chair. This is painful. Laughter rolled over him like a wave, and Isaiah felt his chest tighten. His eyes darted to Jeremy, the man with the money, the smile like a knife. That smirk had returned, smug and satisfied. Isaiah looked down, his heart thudding so loudly it drowned everything else. His hand shook. The cello suddenly felt like it belonged to someone else, someone better, someone worthy. "I don't belong here," the thought whispered. "I never did." He almost stood up, almost walked away. But then he remembered her voice. Soft, steady, safe. His mother's voice, humming beside his bed, her hand gently stroking his forehead as the world outside fell apart. "When you play," she'd whispered once, brushing tears from his cheeks, "no one can hurt you." The sound of her words settled inside him, like light in a dark room. He took a deep breath and closed his eyes. This time, he didn't try to play correctly. He didn't try to impress. He let the ache lead, fingers still trembling, He pulled the bow across the strings. The first note was hesitant, thin, but honest. The next came softer, rounder, like a question spoken through tears. Then another, then another. Each sound carried something he hadn't dared speak. The hunger, the nights on cold concrete, the fire, the silence that followed. He didn't know where the music was going, but his heart did. He leaned into the cello like it was a voice he'd never known he had, and slowly the ballroom began to quiet. The laughter faded. The whispering stopped. Even the clink of wine glasses ceased. A strange stillness took hold. Eyes shifted. Faces sobered. Some people looked confused. Others leaned in, as if listening to something they'd forgotten how to hear. And Jeremy Haynes, who seconds ago had been smugly victorious, now sat forward, brows furrowed, wine untouched. The music wasn't perfect, but it was true. And in a room full of masks and performances, that truth did something no money ever could. It made people feel. Tears welled in the eyes of a woman near the back. A man cleared his throat too loudly, trying to hide the sting behind his eyes. Even the servers stopped mid-step, frozen by the quiet power of it all. The chandelier lights above seemed to dim, or maybe the world just slowed down. And at the center of it, one boy, eyes closed, wrapped around a cello like it was the last safe place on earth. He played as if God himself had given him something to say. And the world listened. The boy did not play like a student. He played like a storm that had been waiting years to break. Isaiah's bow swept over the strings, not with perfect technique, but with raw, aching honesty. His notes trembled, dipped, rose, like a soul trying to speak through the bruises. Each sound reached for something beyond the polished walls and chandelier light, and the room listened. No one moved. No one breathed. Waiters stood mid-step, glasses balanced on trays. Guests sat frozen, eyes locked on the boy they had just mocked. The music had no stage presence, no flair, but it had truth. And truth, when it's pure enough, doesn't need anything else. Tiny mistakes came. A shaky note, a late rhythm, but they didn't matter, because the music wasn't being performed. It was being confessed. And across the room, Jeremy Haynes felt something shift. At first, he didn't understand it. A tightening in his chest, a weight behind his eyes. He blinked once, twice. Isaiah's music wasn't polished, but it was something Jeremy hadn't touched in years. Real, unhidden, human. He leaned forward slightly, heart thudding against the very armor he'd spent decades forging. Then came the memories. His mother's hands, gentle, guiding his fingers over violin strings. Her voice, humming hymns while brushing his hair. Psalm 42. Deep calls to deep. He remembered curling against her side as she played in the living room, the house aglow with warmth and the smell of jasmine tea. He remembered what it felt like to be safe. Then she was gone, and he buried it all. Buried her, buried himself. But now, a trembling boy with torn sleeves and too big shoes was tearing those walls down, with a cello dragged from the trash and a heart that refused to stay silent. Jeremy's throat tightened. He swallowed hard. No, not here. Not now. He fought it. The sting, the ache, the tears rising fast. He clenched his jaw, dug his fingers into the velvet of his chair. But the music wouldn't let him go. It carried something more than sorrow. It carried hope. Not the loud, shiny kind. The quiet kind that slips in when all else is lost. The kind his mother used to sing about. The final note came like a prayer, long, slow, trembling. And then nothing. Silence. Not the awkward kind. The holy kind. Isaiah sat motionless, bow still in the air, like he wasn't ready to return from wherever he'd just gone. And the ballroom? It forgot how to breathe. No applause. No comments. just the sound of hearts remembering how to feel. Jeremy couldn't move. His hands had fallen to his lap, his mouth slightly open. The boy he had mocked, dismissed, humiliated, had just crushed something he thought was untouchable. He wanted to look away, but he couldn't, because for the first time in 20 years, he felt seen. For a long moment, no one moved. Then, applause. Like thunder crashing into the silence, it rolled through the ballroom in waves. Chairs scraped. Hands clapped. Some guests even stood. Dabbing eyes they didn't know had welled up. But Isaiah didn't move. He sat frozen, bow resting loosely in his fingers, heart pounding against his ribs like it was trying to get out. His eyes flicked around the room, wide and unsure. The clapping didn't comfort him. It confused him. He'd never played for applause. He'd played for survival. From his corner of the room, Jeremy Haynes barely registered the noise. The applause sounded far away, like it was happening in another life. He couldn't take his eyes off the boy he'd mocked, the boy who just cracked open the tomb he'd been living in. His chest felt tight, but not with pride or performance. It was something else. Conviction. Shame. Wonder. Jeremy stood. Every step toward Isaiah felt heavier than the last, like the air itself resisted him, like pride was trying to hold him back. Guests watched, some curious, some confused. No one dared speak. Isaiah flinched when Jeremy stopped in front of him. He looked up slowly, unsure, expecting a new version of the same old cruelty, a second act of mockery. But Jeremy didn't speak. He knelt. Gasps scattered across the room. A millionaire in an Armani suit, kneeling on the polished ballroom floor before a boy in torn shoes. Isaiah blinked. Jeremy's voice came low, strained. "I didn't know." He swallowed. His hand shook slightly. "I didn't know you'd been living on the streets." Isaiah said nothing, just watched, waiting, guarded. Jeremy looked at the cello, then back at the boy. "You have a gift," he whispered, "and I want to help you." It wasn't a performance. It was a confession, one the whole room heard, and no one dared interrupt. Isaiah's hands gripped the neck of the cello like a lifeline. Part of him wanted to believe it. Another part didn't know how. He'd been offered too many things that vanished as fast as they came. But this moment felt different. He studied Jeremy's face. Not the suit, not the power, but the eyes, and saw something he hadn't expected. A man trying to remember who he used to be. Jeremy lowered his head for a second, like he was praying or maybe just breathing. And Isaiah, overwhelmed and unsure, did the only thing he could. He whispered, "Okay." The room stood still again, not because of shock, but because something holy had just happened. One boy's music cracked open a millionaire's heart, and in that crack, grace slipped in. Love doesn't always look like a miracle. Sometimes it looks like paperwork, courtrooms, raised eyebrows, cold stares, and resistance from everyone. Jeremy Haynes learned that quickly. The day after the gala, he walked into a lawyer's office and said, "I want to adopt him." Just like that, as if money could smooth over pain, or reputation could erase red tape. But the process fought back. The system didn't care who Jeremy was. Isaiah had no legal guardian on record, no birth certificate on file, no address, no history, just a name scribbled on a clipboard and a cello no one else would touch. Adoption takes time, the lawyer said flatly, especially with a child who's been lost in the system, if he's even in it. Jeremy's jaw tightened. "I don't care how long it takes." That should have been noble, but nobility doesn't stop whispers. At his next board meeting, a friend laughed over his drink. "You're going soft, Haynes." Another scoffed. "Why, that kid? With all your money? Couldn't you get one from an agency that comes with recommendations?" Jeremy didn't answer. He just walked out. Because it wasn't about charity. It was about conviction. At home, things weren't easier. Isaiah flinched when Jeremy raised his voice over a phone call. He never asked for seconds at dinner. He spoke in one-word replies, always watching, like he expected this to end at any moment. He didn't trust comfort. He didn't trust kindness. He didn't trust staying. Once, Jeremy bought him a new coat. A warm one. Real down. Isaiah stared at it for 10 minutes, then whispered, "Should I leave the tags on in case I have to give it back?" Jeremy's heart broke quietly. Another night, they argued. "I'm not trying to be your father," Jeremy snapped, exhausted after a long court filing. "I didn't ask you to be." Isaiah fired back, eyes blazing. "I'm not your project." The silence after that lasted 2 days. But then came the cello. It became their truce. Late at night, Jeremy would sit in the music room, the one he hadn't touched since his mother's death, and listen. Isaiah would play, not like at the gala, not to impress, but to feel. And somehow, Jeremy began to feel too. One night, after a quiet song that lingered like a prayer, Jeremy said softly, "That piece, it reminds me of her." Isaiah looked up. "Your mom?" Jeremy nodded. "She played violin. Every night. Just like that." Isaiah said nothing, but the next evening, he played again. Slower this time. Softer. Healing didn't come in a straight line. It came in music. In the slow way two hearts learned to stay in the same room without fear. In court dates and canceled meetings. In awkward dinners and shared silence. And over time, Isaiah began to believe something almost too fragile to say aloud. He might not be invisible anymore. Love sounds beautiful, until it costs you something. The scandal started with a headline. Billionaire bends rules to adopt street kid. PR move or midlife crisis. Then came the whispers. The charity board pulled Jeremy aside. A partner in his firm called Isaiah a liability. At a fundraiser, a woman laughed into her champagne and said, "So brave of you, Jeremy. Adopting a homeless black child. How progressive." Isaiah wasn't supposed to hear that, but he did. He'd gone looking for the restroom and found a hallway full of polished people with polished opinions. He stood there, invisible in plain sight, listening to them talk about him like he was a headline, not a human. It's probably a phase. He'll grow out of it, or send the boy back. Kids like that don't stay long anyway. He didn't cry. He didn't yell. He just ran. By the time Jeremy realized Isaiah was gone, panic bloomed like fire in his chest. He drove for hours, city blocks, alleys, every corner of the old neighborhood. His hands shook on the steering wheel. Fear clawed at him like something alive. When he finally spotted Isaiah curled near the old music shop, shivering, hoodie pulled tight, Jeremy slammed the brakes and ran. "Don't," Isaiah said without looking. "I'm not good for you." I heard what they said. Jeremy's heart cracked. He knelt in front of him, breathing hard. "Do you think I care what they said?" "You should." Isaiah's voice broke. "You were somebody. Now everyone thinks you're ruined." Jeremy reached out, but Isaiah flinched. Not in fear, just heartbreak. Jeremy dropped his hand. His voice came quieter. "I've had money my whole life. Power. Status. Houses with 20 rooms, and not a single one that felt like home." Isaiah looked up, eyes red and tired. "You were the first person," Jeremy whispered, "to make my house feel alive, to make me feel seen, not as a name or a suit, but as a man who still has something to give." Silence wrapped around them like night. Jeremy swallowed the lump in his throat. "This isn't about saving you. This is about choosing you." Isaiah blinked. "Why?" "Because God didn't give me a second chance, so I could waste it." His voice shook. And because you're not a charity case. You're family. If you'll have me. Isaiah didn't speak. Just stared. Then, slowly, he leaned forward. Jeremy opened his arms, and for the first time, Isaiah let himself fall into them. There were no cameras. No applause. Just two broken hearts finally choosing each other. Somewhere nearby, church bells rang midnight. A new day. A new promise. The courtroom smelled like wood polish and waiting. Jeremy sat in a suit less perfect than usual, hands folded, eyes steady. Isaiah sat beside him, wearing a button-down shirt that didn't quite fit, his hands clenched in his lap. The judge looked over the papers, adjusted her glasses, and then smiled. "Congratulations, Mr. Haynes. The adoption is approved." It was quiet for a beat. Then Isaiah broke. Tears fell fast, no warning, no words. Just a flood of everything he'd been holding in for far too long. Jeremy reached over without hesitation and pulled him close, hand on the back of Isaiah's head, steady and safe. "It's done," he whispered. "You're home now." That night, the mansion no longer felt like marble and echo. It felt like life. In the music room, Isaiah sat at the cello, fingers poised, eyes focused. But this time, he didn't play with fear or survival. He played with joy. A new melody, soft, warm, full of things he didn't know how to say aloud. He called it home. Jeremy watched from the couch, stunned that something so beautiful had come from a boy once found behind a dumpster. When the song ended, Isaiah turned, hopeful and a little shy. "I wrote that for you." Jeremy's throat tightened. "It's the most beautiful thing I've ever heard." Isaiah grinned. "Want to play something with me?" Jeremy chuckled, unsure. "I haven't touched a piano since." "Try." So Jeremy sat beside him. Isaiah showed him two simple keys. "Just these. When I nod." Jeremy waited. Isaiah began again, this time lighter, brighter. And when he nodded, Jeremy pressed the keys with stiff fingers. It sounded awful. They both burst out laughing. Real laughter, not polite, not reserved. The kind that fills a room like sunlight. And for the first time, the house felt like it had a heartbeat. They played until the hour grew late. Then they sat in comfortable silence, Isaiah resting his head against Jeremy's shoulder, the cello beside them, like a witness to grace. Later that night, Jeremy stood in the doorway of Isaiah's room, once a guest room, now scattered with sheet music, socks, and life. He whispered a prayer. Not fancy, not rehearsed, just honest. "Thank you, God, for not giving up on me." In the stillness, he could hear a faint melody from down the hall, Isaiah humming to himself as he drifted off to sleep. Jeremy smiled. The boy had come from the streets, carrying scars and silence. But he brought something into Jeremy's world that neither wealth nor power ever could. Music, hope, family. Because sometimes the most extraordinary music comes from the most forgotten hearts. And sometimes the smallest boy can change the biggest life.
If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe. And before you go, drop a comment below saying, "Love always wins."